Welcome to Horns Up. I'm Peter.
And I'm Animesh.
And we're talking tech debt today with Fallujah, who are releasing their fifth studio album, Empyrean, on the 9th of September. Now, joining us a few days before the D-Day is Scott Carstairs. Am I saying that correct?
Yeah, pretty much Carstairs.
Carstairs. Yeah. Okay, not bad.
Yeah.
At least got that one out of the way. But how are you doing today, man? And how are you feeling at the moment about Empyrean?
Yeah, man, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on your show. And yeah, I'm really excited. It's been such a long time coming. All the time we put into writing it, and then all the time we had to put into just waiting for it after turning it into the label. I can't believe we're 3 days away. It's actually very surreal for me, especially this album. This is an album we put so much work into, more than any other album. So it's just like, I don't know. I thought this day would never come, and here it is. Now I'm kind of like freaking out for time just because we go on tour 2 days after the album drops, and we're planning on playing pretty much the entire album. So I'm just like, God, I wish I had a couple more weeks, but no, this is it. We got to do it.
So it's safe to say it's like that nervous excitement that you tend to have before something launches, right?
Oh yeah, there's a couple stages of nervous excitement. The first one was the first single, going from nobody hearing it to people are going to get a peek
Finally
in the direction.
sharing it with the world.
Yeah, finally get to hear, because it wasn't just like, it's not a continuation of the last album in any way. This is very much it's going to be a surprise to certain people. It's going to be like a relief to certain people. I don't know. So I just wanted to see the reaction, especially because we had some new members involved. That's always kind of anxious thing, and then. That was the first wave. Now the next wave is for them to hear the rest of it and for us to perform it live and for it to be just out in the world,
Good that you're saying that, right? Because when I first heard the single, and then I was like, wait, what happened to Fallujah, right? And then I got the promo copy for the album, and then you kind of have, from the first track itself, it kind of eases you in. And I'm going to put this out there right up front, right? Like, I sense a new sense of energy in the band overall. And I was listening to a recent interview that you did where you actually said you wanted to approach Empyrean as your first album. So could you take us back to that thought process? Because if I'm not mistaken, you started writing this much before COVID hit in 2020, right?
Yeah, I think it had to have been at least 4 months or so before COVID hit, maybe 4 or 5. But during that time, we had a tour with Beyond Creation, Darkest Hour, and Chaos and Carnage. So it was the times in between tours. So we were like doing these tours, and we only had like a few weeks. So let's just spend it, just writing music. So that was kind of like the beginnings of it, basically. And the band had kind of gone through like an arc where we had our first album, you know what I mean? We had to get on board. That was when we were like 17 or 18. And then we did an EP to start introducing kind of some newer elements, because the first album was pretty much all tech death. It was kind of influenced by, all the stuff we were into when we were younger, like Unique Leader record bands, like Decrepit Birth and, Spawn of Possession, Deeds of Flesh, Severed Savior, a lot of Bay Area bands, but also, a lot of bands. I call them the Unique Leader record bands. They all kind of found their way onto that label, and I don't know. I just seemed to be really into them as a kid, and so we started. We're growing as musicians and getting better and learning more about music and growing our influences. So of course the music kind of changes with us as we grow up, and we're trying to find ways we can evolve the band and take new techniques and take in new directions. And you kind of see that evolution through the first 3 albums. You know what I mean? It goes from tech death to introducing prog elements to Dreamless, where it's kind of like. It took that sound and, maybe at the time after writing all that music, because those 2 albums, Flesh Prevails and Dreamless, they're pretty much written all in one time, all at once. There wasn't really a break to like reflect and grow or anything like that. It was kind of just keep working until both of those were done. Because we turned one in, and as soon as one was finished and turned in, it basically initiated our relationship with Nuclear Blast, and they wanted to work with us, but they couldn't do anything with that record. They needed a brand new record. So I'd immediately, to get the party started with Nuclear Blast, we had to have a new record. So it was just touring, nonstop writing, and just kind of depending on my old techniques and concepts to get this music out or whatever. So by the time I had a chance to take a break and reflect on had been like 7 or 8 years of writing music, and we had lineup changes. So I had the option of trying new vocalist sounds, you know what I mean? Trying new musical concepts. I basically just went in a very experimental direction with Undying Light and kind of tried to go completely in a different direction and try to maybe even take it in almost like a shoegaze, black metal, proggy kind of, I mean, I feel like when you're young, it's not just about writing good music. It's also your ego's involved, and you also want people to know that, like, hey, I'm I'm at the same level as these other musicians, you know what I mean, even though I'm 17 and 18. So you tend to like to overperform, and like the music sounds kind of insane, like young kids trying to make really intense hard music, you know what I mean? So I think with Undying Light, we came to this age where it's like, I don't really need to impress you. I really just want to challenge myself and my ability to like create soundscapes and atmospheres. And that's basically what that whole record was. And finishing it had like this really nice feeling, like we got this like musical tension out of us, you know what I mean? Because it built up for me, after writing 3 albums. It's just like I felt like I was doing the same thing. I wanted to try something new, and trying something new and it being challenging, and then completing it and putting it out, it was just kind of like cathartic, and it kind of made me feel really good about music. And so then we have we're going on tour for that, and then the pandemic starts, and it was just what felt right was just like we need to go to like kind of the original goals of the band, like a kind of like a fresh start, you know what I mean, but do it with the experience that we have, you know what I mean. Andrew and I have been in the band since we were like 16 now, so like we've been jamming and making music since we were 14 and 15, and
wow,
I think it just so 14, 15, we're like 31 now, you know what I mean, so we've been together for long time, you know what I mean. We've had a lot of experience with touring, lots of different stages, recording or whatever, and we didn't have that when we first made that record when we were 16 or 17 and 18. So I think it just felt right to one, make an album that we had this energy, like this has to be our ultimate album. We have to put like everything into this, and almost like in an arrogant kind of ignorant way. And of course we're doing it during the pandemic when we don't even know if we're going to be able to go on tour again. But we just felt determined, like we wouldn't feel good until we finish this, whether people get to hear it or not, whether we get to go on tour or not. Like we needed to put like the ultimate Fallujah album out. And pretty much that just kind of set the stage for everything we did writing. And it basically turned it into a super tedious process, because that was the theme and everybody knew it, and including Mark, who was producing it. So every aspect, it was just like we took so much time to make sure it was perfect. And again, having the pandemic there and no tours looming, it kind of gave you an excuse to be like, well, you have this time, you need to put all your time into it. And it was just kind of repeating that like every day and every week until it's 6 months and then a year. And then all of a sudden you're like, dude, we've put so much work into it, we have to finish it, and then I don't know, but it came out super awesome. And a lot of that has to do with the new members that we got into the band too, because they brought that energy as well. And they came in towards like, as the songs were kind of getting finished up, we had these songs done, and we're getting all tired. We're like, we're like, dude, how can we go on like this? And like, are these good enough? Like we've used up our own creative energy, and to bring someone like Evan and Kyle in, and they could look at the songs from like a kind of like bird's eye view and be like, all right, we need more momentum in this song, or like, I got some ideas for this. And you just kind of feed off that energy, and it's just like, oh yeah, we could do more with this. We could do more with this, and kind of got us right back on track. And then, it was a matter of just getting it recorded, which sometimes is harder than creating it for me. Like the last album, it was harder to create it than it was to record it, just because I was trying to create new sounds, and I wasn't depending on older ideas. It was kind of like, fuck, like just, I want something new. So I was kind of like banging my head against the wall, trying all these different ideas, and be like, that kind of sounds new, but not good enough, or whatever, it's just kind of like tedious. But with this one, it was like, let's just let it flow out of us. Let's just make stuff that's going to get people excited when we play it on stage. It's going to sound really good on the speakers, and kind of let that guide us. And we already had like a vision for what the album was going to sound like. So it was real smooth the way it came out. And then recording it, just because we basically put together this like 55-minute tech death album that's like got these insane riff passages, insane solos. It was actually way more painful to record it than it was to create it. It was just, trying to get like natural takes, you know what I mean, and not have to punch in every note or even every measure or whatever. So we had to like do a lot of rehearsing, and it was really brutal. And like the music is it's just hard music, you know what I mean? So I remember my arms just like hurting at the end of the day all the time, just like, God damn, we were just pushing it. And I don't know. Same thing with the drumming too. The drumming it's one of the craziest drum albums we have for sure. Yeah, it's crazy to watch Andrew record it. But yeah, I'm just ranting on. Maybe you got some more questions.
No,
No, we don't.
I love being a thought. I love being a thought starter.
Yeah. I could go on and on.
Alrighty, no. So two things stood out from what you just said. One was the fact that this was envisioned as the ultimate Fallujah album, right? Or the most definitive Fallujah album, if that's the right way for a listener to interpret what you just said. Was that your target or your ambition as such that drove you on Empyrean? Do you think it would have been possible if you didn't have the luxury of time that the lockdowns and the pandemic gave you?
Yeah. I think it would have been different, that's for sure, if we didn't have the lockdowns, because I changed the process in which we do things from the way we used to do things. You know, when writing The Flesh Prevails, because it was around The Flesh Prevails and Dreamless when we really had to started to deal with balancing tour and writing music. And, you know, it's not just us at home kind of going to school, doing it after school or something, you know, kind of that's how the first album went. We had endless time because it was just like, it was the one we were going to get us into the world. But yeah, those two albums, it was a lot of balance, you know what I mean? And for this album, yeah, I think I definitely made choices that I wouldn't have if I had all these tours going on, just because, you know, I just knew I had infinite time. And one of the main things was just like looking at the songs, you know, because usually if it's going to be a 10-song album, we'll work on 10 songs and we'll finish them, you know what I mean? And we'll go to the studio. For this one, it was like, let's grow, because that's how I see it. I kind of see them as seeds, you know what I mean? I have an idea, and maybe I'll do a bunch of ideas, like the first stage of writing, just get a bunch of ideas, just go in all these different directions creatively. And once you have like a nice catalog of ideas, you can kind of look at them. You're not in the weeds with any of them, because when you're making an idea, you can't really know if it's good or not. You're just really focused on bringing that idea to life or whatever. And once you're done doing it, for me, I kind of lose perspective. So once I have like a lot of ideas in front of me, it's pretty easy for me to detect like what direction we want to go to. And of course, you get feedback from the band, like, oh, this has a cool sound. So you figure out which ones you like, and you start to grow those into songs. You know what I mean? And eventually, you get to maybe 10 or 15 ideas that are now growing into maybe 2 minutes each or something like that, a minute and a half. They have like, you know, song structures that we could finish, and we can decide, all right, which is what's going to be on the album. And it's like during that stage that we're trying to figure out the balance of the album. Do we want the album to be real fast and real embellished? Do we want it to be like real slow and lethargic and real atmospheric, or, you know, a mix of the two or whatever? And I think, you know, with this album, instead of growing 10 songs and putting those 10 songs on the record, and just it turns out how it turns out, which is kind of how the other records are. It's like you actually lose control of the album a little bit, because it's not like you can't force the music to grow into what you want to. Sometimes it's just like you set yourself up for it to grow into that, and you just have to like nurture it to where it needs to go. But for this, we had like 15 songs that we could have picked, and we picked the past, you know, 10 that are going to make the balance of the album perfect, exactly what we envisioned in the beginning, you know what I mean? And then of those 10, instead of just writing them and calling them done and moving on to the next stages, there was a lot of you know, looking at the song maybe while you were working on something else, like the leads or the lyrics, and be like, yo, this section, we could totally delete this and make something better. It's messing up the momentum of the song, or, you know, stuff like that, which was not usual. I usually made it work with the records before. And this time there's a lot, because, you know, when you're with the bandmates and you're collaborating, at a certain point, like, you have to stop the back and forth, because it's like you'll never get it done. Like, we have to agree, like we have to get this done. You know, we got a tour in a few weeks. Like, if we do this for this one song, if we take 2 weeks on one song, that's 20 weeks for the whole album. You know what I mean? Like, if we just do the math real quick. So I'm always thinking like that, like, yo, we can't spend this much time on this, because it's going to turn into a 3-year project or whatever. but yeah, for this one, we were able to be real tedious and kind of absurd about things, and just constantly going back and changing things and taking the time to replace sections or even try ideas that never even panned out. You know what I mean? But it was just a lot less pressure, and I think because we did that, there's not like a single portion of the album where I feel something's missing, or there needs a little bit more momentum, or maybe things are too fast or too slow, or they need more embellishment. Like, I made sure that as soon as at least for me personally, as soon as I like lost interest or was not like feel like there was enough detail being thrown at me, it's like, okay, we need to go work on this section, you know. So overall, the album has this very like embellished, complex sound to it, but it's very like flowy. Like there's no transitions, because sometimes it's unavoidable. You have a transition that just is not as smooth as you want it to be, but it just kind of becomes the characteristic of the song. You know what I mean? And listeners and the artist just kind of get used to it or whatever. But we were able to kind of like hammer out all those things. So yeah, to answer that question about, you know, do you think you could do it without the pen? I think now, having done it, I realize what it takes to make an album like this. So we'll have to figure out how that's going to work with touring schedule. But I don't think it would have turned out the same without the pandemic, for sure. 100%. Yeah. And then there was, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no. So obviously, because you had the luxury of time with you, and clearly all the other footage shows, but like to me and to whatever creative projects that I was working on with an increased amount of time as such to work on it, what that lends to is more self-doubt in some way, and also a lot more internal debate as to, is this the best version of what the idea is, or does it need more work, or am I just happy just letting go of it in this particular whatever shape or form it is? Did you have to face those kind of struggles as such? I wouldn't call them struggles. Like, struggles is not the right word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's just like kind of like a part of the process. It's like you have to like kind of you kind of have to deal with that like kind of lull in your excitement and inspiration, because it's almost like you feed off of that a little bit. You're you're excited, you know what I mean, and then you're excited to start the riff. Or it ends up being, you know, what you hear in your head ends up not sounding exactly right coming through the speakers. And then the amount of tedious work you have to put in it to make it sound good, by the end of it, you're so tired of hearing it that the excitement, you don't even know if is this good enough? Is this what was I going for in the first place? And especially when you're doing a lot of it by yourself, you're having it be your own audience and stuff like that. Yeah, you get fatigued and you kind of like lose perspective. So that happens all the time. But I've kind of learned.
Do you think that happened on Empyrean?
Yes, but I feel like that's stuff that because that would happen all the time. Working on records, and I kind of learned that you can't just be isolated, and that just slows you down. So I do have a little bit of like a process. Like I even have like literally written out like a writing process, how to get back on track, like motivationally, you know what I mean? And so sometimes it's just like theory based, you know what I mean? Like, what are the steps do we need there? Like, you know, like I have literally a step by step, like, okay, you need the tempo, you need the key the key center, and then you need like what's the concept, what's the motif, what's the scale. But even then, like that might not help. So I always depend on some sort of audience or collaboration. You know what I mean? That always helps me out if I'm showing it to the bandmates and we discuss it, or I'm showing it to some close friends or whatever. And even if they don't know anything about music theory, they don't even know what I'm going for, just like getting a little bit of a reaction, a little bit of a bounce off of somebody kind of gets me a feel. And it's, I don't know, so it's kind of funny that I'll be like staring at them like, nope, that didn't hit. Like, let me try something else. Like, and I could just tell, because it's not even like, they shouldn't even have to think about it. Like, it should just be a natural reaction, because that's what you're looking for, is that like instant, like, oh shit, that was sick. Or if it just passes by them and they didn't even notice it, you're like, all right, that clearly wasn't that cool, you know, like it just sounded like the rest of it, whatever. But yeah, definitely dealt with that. But just with this record, I feel like it was just so clear what we wanted it to sound like. We knew we had the discography already. We had plenty of concepts. We understood what the message of the band was, but we were just kind of all looking for this like certain level of embellishment, you know what I mean? And balance, you know, like there's like I said, it kind of went back to our roots with what inspired us, like those tech death bands, like Deeds of Flesh, Necrophagist, the Faceless. You know what I mean? It was like this like new like type of jazz kind of coming out. There's like a certain like amount of complexity and embellishment that you like expect, you know what I mean? And we can almost like hear that in our head when we're working on the album. Like, it has to be at this intensity level, and it also has to have this amount of time. Like, it can't just be, Necrophagist is kind of example of they're just on max riff for like an entire song, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the amount of embellishment I like when it comes to the riff, but I want more dynamics to the music, like a movie or something like we want to have these ultimate low points that are almost nearly dead silent. You know what I mean? You could like hear every little thing, and then it takes you all the way to the top of the mountain where you're soaring with the giant leads, and it's as loud, as big as possible, the entire album. So it's like we had enough experience to where there wasn't a lot of doubt on this album. And yeah, like I said earlier, it was a lot easier to write this record than most of the other records. It was harder to record it. It was just such an immense task after we had everything kind of established what we wanted to do. That was the hard part. But for this one, it was more about being natural. And I think it was easy to do that because we were coming off of Undying Light, where we went in a completely different direction, where we were using our brain and not our hands. You know what I mean? For this one, it was like I'd just pick up my guitar and I would just jam, and I would just be recording until I found something like that was nice and smooth and like flowy. So even though the album sounds like an album that's really like so we're like procured and cultivated, I guess, like it's mostly improv riffs that have been refined, essentially. You know what I mean? Which I wasn't really into, because I was always afraid of being too repetitive when I was younger. You know what I mean? If you're always improvising your riffs, you're going to end up doing the same things. The hands kind of naturally, do their own thing. But I think with this record, it was because we had stepped away for the last record. It was really easy for me to just do what came natural. And I think that's the sound that people have grown accustomed to anyway. So it worked out well. It's more so just like the energy, you know what I mean? We're just sitting there like thinking about the live show and like, we need to have a heavy part. So I would just improvise some heavy riffs until we got something that was like embellished enough and just got us all stoked, you know what I mean? And kind of really just rode that instead of trying to think all technical with like, stuff, you know what I mean? It was very,
how many notes can I play, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It was very improvised feeling, very naturally, like, it wasn't, or, that wasn't really common for us. There's times where we would get out Guitar Pro on other older albums, you know what I mean? And like, I like Guitar Pro, it's cool, but it gives a feeling to the riffs that almost makes it feel a little like less human feeling, a little less natural feeling.
A bit more mechanical. Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, what brings to mind when you're talking about all of this is just the first Necrophagist album, right? Like that was just exactly that. Almost inhuman if you think about it.
But, and I think it was too. I mean, they played it, but I'm pretty sure that's how they recorded it.
So. Yeah, because that was a drum machine. But since you brought this up a couple of times, right? I have to ask you at this point, is you talked about just the creative process earlier with, touring and how you'd have to kind of focus on that and have that as a deadline and things like that. Now that you've gone through this entire process, right? How do you kind of look at probably creativity in the next album or creating that, right? Because you've had the luxury of time now, but is there a process that you can kind of take from here, which you can kind of replicate going forward?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like always been my main focus, is like, how can we speed up the process? You know what I mean? Without sacrificing any of the sound anyway. How can we get the same amount of embellishment and detail, but get it done in like a year as opposed to 2 years? And sometimes it's like as simple as like little things, like, like instead of just recording my guitar onto a DAW or whatever, I try to record my DI onto the DAW always try to make sure that my guitar is, it sucks, but just to make it like, sometimes you want to just use the same strings over and over again because you just want to sit down and get to working on it, but just like taking the time to like make sure the guitar strings are fresh and it's going to be recorded to a quality that if I want to use it later, I could still use it. And that could cut out a bunch of time. You know what I mean? where if I record what I recorded for the pre-pro might actually end up on the album. And and I did that for this album. There was like a lot of leads where the first improvised take was actually just was awesome. And honestly, I'd be trying to like just emulate that if I was trying to re-record that. You know what I mean? So simple things like that. And then there's other concepts where I just realized like there was things I would do on maybe the second or third album that I realized you think you're trying to get, you think you're getting stuff done, but actually you're just frustrating yourself. You know what I mean? Like, let's say I need a section for a song or whatever, and I vaguely know what it is, but I don't really know what it needs to be, but I know I need to get the song done. And I only have, let's say, like 4 hours of free time in between my whatever's going on with my life. And the natural thing is like, all right, let's just sit down and let's just hammer this out. You know what I mean? And I call it mining for riffs. When I'm hanging out with the dudes, and we end up in this situation where I call it mining for riffs. It's where you forget. It's like where you forget the concept of the riff, and you're literally just trying to find the next note. You're just like banging it. It's just note after note, and that's not a good situation to be in, because then you're just hoping to make progress, and then when you look back at the riff, it's just going to be not very creative, and it's just going to look like you slowly piece together this like little thing or whatever. I'm sure plenty of writers can relate to that, where you're just begging for the next note. You know what I mean? Where rather than for 4 hours trying to do that, why don't we just take the first 30 minutes or first hour and really just use our imagination to like create a concept, like what does this song need? And like, let's be in the imagination stage, the concept stage, and get a visual of what we're trying to make, instead of trying to do the opposite, where you're trying to make riffs and you're trying to let that give you a hint of what the visual is going to be. Like, I know I've done it before, where you're trying to make something and then you kind of hear like, oh, that was kind of cool. And then you try to use your imagination, like, what's the rest of it supposed to be like? And it's like, you're trying to like, I call it mining, because it's like you hit like a little piece of like some gold, and you're like hoping that the rest of the gold vein is deep in there. Exactly. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I noticed if you kind of try to avoid that, things will get done a lot faster. And I do things like just like knowing that the creativity like never really happens when you're sitting down. That's where the tedious work is to be done. So like I just try to keep like notes in my phone, where if I'm listening to a cool band, or I'm in my car, or doing one of those kind of like cognitive tasks like dishes or something like that,
Oh yeah.
And you have a concept in your head, like your imagination goes crazy, and it could be conceptual, like, I want a drum fill to start here, then a vocal part, and then the guitars come in. And like, I don't know those details, but I know the overall arching things. And then I write that down in my memo, or even talk it in a voice memo. And I have this like list of things that when I do have that special 4 hours in between busy life, like I'm looking at concepts and then doing the tedious work to the concepts, instead of just like trying to bring it out of nothing. And then that gives you, that kind of makes the album sound a little more robotic, because you're kind of just piecing, you're mining for riffs, you know what I mean, as opposed to just like taking something. Wow. So I know, so stuff like that, I've noticed can speed up the process a lot, you know what I mean? And that's stuff that I try to get rid of on this album. And then, then maybe also just accepting like, okay, this is the amount of, the band has tried a lot of different things. Like you tried Undying Light sound, it tried like that Dreamless sound, and with the Empyrean sound, like there's just a certain amount of embellishment it takes, and a kind of amount of content you need to have in a song. And then I think that just is just like kind of coming to terms with it, that it's just going to take a little bit longer, you know what I mean, to make an album like this. So at least I have the experience during a time where the pressure's not on. So when the pressure is on to finish it earlier, I could fight for my time, you know what I mean, and be like, no, this is worth us waiting another 2 weeks because it's going to sound like this. And sometimes you can't help it though. It just shit takes forever.
This is really interesting because or the more I try to relate to what you're saying, it's almost like you've struck upon this process that now will work to arrive at almost say a stellar result, if not the best result that you're looking for. It also, this conversation reminded me of a Calvin and Hobbes strip, which is one of the ones that is absolutely dearest to me, in which Hobbes asks Calvin, do you have an idea for your story yet? And Calvin replies, no, I'm waiting for inspiration. You can't just turn on creativity like a faucet. You have to be in the right mood. And then Hobbes asks, what mood is that? And Calvin replies, last minute panic.
Dude, that's a good one.
That's a great one, right? Because
it works too.
So many creative folks, literally, it's the deadlines that make us achieve our results, right? And
totally.
Yeah, like you don't realize it, but you need to let your mind rest and let it wander for creativity and inspiration to strike. And
or wash dishes, right? Like
or
I
wash
love that
dishes,
example.
exactly, right?
I love that thing.
Yeah,
because like what I related to in that was, it's the best ideas I've had is when I'm doing the most mundane things, when I'm not like literally
when
sitting in front of my computer. Yeah,
to
like,
just wander. You want
taking a shower.
So
that's where I get the best ideas.
Same, exactly.
This process that you seem to have cracked, do you think it's a process that will work if you share it with others? That's
sure.
a potential landmine. Like that's a potential like merch line, money making thing, influencer.
Like
motivational all of that, speaker.
Right? It's for motivational speaker. Well, I mean, I was teaching guitar lessons since I was about 18 till the pandemic hit. And the only reason I stopped, I was really depending on guitar lessons primarily because we couldn't tour anymore. So I was like, all right, well, the side job that I had, I'm going to try to make as much as I can and make it as big as possible. But there kind of hits a limit with teaching where just the amount of time that you need to give people like good guitar lessons or whatever, like stuff worth it, it just becomes too much. You can't even work on music or be creative or whatever. But during those times, I don't think I would have written this process out unless I had students, you know what I mean? Usually I just keep it all in my head and, just kind of, which is not good or whatever. But I had so many people coming to me specifically asking me like, yo, how can I write a riff, or how can I get out of writer's block? Like, honestly, 9 out of 10 people that ask me for guitar lessons, it's always asking about like what scales I use and the key change. It's always like really theory based, because I think they hear the music and they hear these like kind of exotic sounds that don't just sound like a minor scale. They sound like it's changing keys, and they want to know how to do it. And I mean, I was exactly the same way. That's the only reason I got guitar lessons, because I would show them the music, like, okay, how did they make this music or whatever?
Exactly.
So,
right.
Yeah. So it forced me to write this stuff down and kind of have take a critical look at like how I write music and what are the important steps and organize it. So luckily I was doing it for other people, but now I benefit from it. It was, you know what I mean? Like I put the work to write it down for my students, and just taking the time to think about it, looking at it, it's helped me out a lot. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I haven't been teaching a lot, but maybe I could try to get all capitalistic on it. But I don't know.
It always fascinates me how when a stellar piece of work is created and shared with the world, reviewers, critiques, fans, etc. will look at it and go like, holy shit, this is really good, and this is why it's really good, because now they'll analyze it and they'll go like, oh, it was done in this particular fashion, or it had this kind of theory, or it followed these kind of rules, or did this pattern. And then when you go back and actually listen to whoever created it, they'll just be like, oh, but it just happened and it just flowed like that for me. I wasn't really thinking about, that particular theory or model or a way of doing it. It just flowed.
Right. I mean, yeah. And dude, I've been fascinated with this for a long time. And every time I'm watching, because I've had to do this since I was 17 or 18. And some people, when it's a big project like that, it's like, I've always tried to thought, like, how can I get control over it? And like you said, all these questions about like, how can you be creative or not? And I'm always looking at like TV shows, like, like what's the difference between like a renowned show that everybody loves and like, like Breaking Bad or like Game of Thrones, like, are those songs, like what is it like an amount of embellishment? Is like an amount of content? Is it amount of like is it like dynamics? Is it because your expectations are being subverted like this amount of times or whatever? And then the other thing I look at is like comedians too. That's another really good inspiration. Like, like these really talented, because they have to come up with, and what I think are like albums, you know what I mean? They have to write their new set. And it seems like that's what's always occupying their mind, is like it's like, if you look at like Louis or Dave Chappelle or Kevin Hart, they're always talking about their creative process to get a new set. And it's kind of like how can you be funny? That's kind of like similar to how can this music be like impressive and like, like
Exactly. Yeah.
magical sounding. It's like you have to do like a lot of like field work. And like what I hear from them a lot is, I think more than once from other ones, is like they can't just like sit down in a room and write some more out and have it done by next week. It's not an hours thing. It's to them, it's like they need to experience more life. They need another like 6 months of experiencing life and the funny things and being out there and absorbing all that. And I think you have to do the same thing with music. You know what I mean? You got to go to more shows, you got to listen to some more albums, and not even, you got to watch some more animes and sci-fi movies and get your brain like, oh shit. And make sure in those moments you're writing down that little magical stuff that got you excited or whatever. But I don't know. Yeah, and even then, when you try all those things, you still might end up kind of like, fuck, what do I do? You know what I mean? But
absolutely.
But yeah, I think what I've learned, it is a process. Like when I was younger, it was kind of just like, just do your best to make the best thing you can or whatever, and hopefully people like it. But I've noticed when you see those successful TV shows, movies, comedians, there is a process, and they see creativity as a resource, just like anything else, and it's like valuable, and it can't just be like made out of nothing. You have to like go make it happen for yourself. And I don't know, definitely take a lot of influence from that. And I don't know if there's, and just from watching those guys, it sounds like there is a certain kind of like gestation period you do need for things to be really good. You know what I mean? For something to be quality, it has to, and to feel real and not like manufactured. It has to come from somewhere real. So it takes time, kind of.
We've got into like really deep into the entire process.
I love it. Yeah.
But I want to ask you one thing, and let's just get back to Empyrean for a bit, right? Because personally, when I was listening to the album, and a lot of what you're talking about, kind of, I can get a background to, because one of the things I felt listening to the album, and which I must say, because I listened to a lot of tech that I found strange, was it left me a bit melancholic of sorts.
Yeah.
And so I just want to understand from the perspective of the writing, I mean, what was the kind of emotional journey that you wanted to take the listener with this album, right? And is my experience like the only one you heard, or is there others like me?
Well, I do know that the sound, I can't really like, that's kind of a part of our sound, I think, is this melancholic thing. It's almost like I've heard it called ambiguous almost, you know what I mean? And it could be down to the chord voicings that I like to use. And I like to use things that don't quite sound major, that don't quite sound minor, or if they do, they kind of dance around it. So I do love that kind of melancholic feel to start with. But I do think the music in itself was kind of supposed to be kind of like it's supposed to be triumphant in my opinion, but also kind of still painful, you know what I mean? And the whole idea of Empyrean, the reason why we picked the name, and we were very close to calling it our self-titled album for Fallujah, just because we really wanted it to be like, this is the Fallujah album, but we thought Empyrean was just real powerful and fit really well with the concepts. Empyrean's supposed to be like this highest level of heaven. It's like there's a bunch of definitions, but like all of them kind of seem to be the same imagery of like this highest plane where God's and man's will meet, and it's about creativity, and it's like this other realm, and it's like the highest realm. And that's the same thing, same reason we went with that art. We wanted this visual of somebody looking to the heavens and being blinded by like its like beauty and its glory or whatever, but still like this person, this thing is in the ocean on ground level, like it's at the bottom, like gazing, like hoping for this higher place. You know what I mean? And with the music and the tones that we chose, like we were really specific about which songs are supposed to be where, and we knew them before they were even fully finished songs. This was like the first song we knew was going to be the album intro. So when we're writing it and we're trying to embellish it, we knew this is going to be the first song. It needs to feel like this. And the last song we knew was going to be the last song, and all that stuff. And we wanted this album to have this kind of like journey from darkness, you know what I mean? And even the concept of the riffs, like the very first riff that comes in is just like white noise. I'm just like, it's just an open chord, and it's almost like there's no details or content or anything like that. And it's very dissonant and very angry and kind of panicked and frantic sounding. Like, I mean, the first lyrics are fragment cognizance. You know what I mean? The title of the name is The Bitter Taste of Clarity. It's like the panic realization, you know what I mean, that you're in the wrong place, that you're on the wrong path. And it's supposed to be the beginning. Like, I feel like a journey sometimes starts with that kind of panicked, flushed, kind of like sweaty feeling of like, this is not the way it's supposed to be. Like, I need to move in a different direction and go through that pain. And so the album starts with these really dark tones, and it's like slowly grows and forms into something. And basically the album's supposed to take you kind of on this journey to Empyrean. And like, if you look at the songs, like the lyrical content, it goes from the bitter taste of clarity to radiant ascension, like the beginning of the emergence begins, and the reasons why you're being pulled back to it. You know what I mean? Embrace oblivion is like kind of discussing the external world, because like you could be trying to move towards Empyrean, but you're going to have to deal with chaos. You're going to have to deal with oblivion. You know what I mean? Embrace oblivion, adapt to it. You know what I mean? Work through it. And all these concepts we were trying to just pull from stuff that we related to, that was important to us. And we felt like if we related to this, that, you know, there's going to be other people that are going to be able to relate in their own way. And maybe our problems are our problems, and they could be trivial to others. But, you know, we wanted to have these metaphors for you're dealing with, you know, pain and overcoming obstacles. And so, you know, some of them are external, and Embrace Oblivion kind of discuss that. Some of them are internal, you know what I mean, are psychological obstacles, and that's like Soul Breaker and Duality of Intent. So yeah, the entire, just to kind of touch on what you originally brought up about it being melancholic, it is a song about like pushing through, or sorry, it's an album about like pushing through pain. So there is times of triumphantness, you know what I mean, but there's also times of like despair and kind of like, you know, like this kind of sadness, like it's like an impossibility to achieve this or whatever. And that's what I feel like life kind of feels like sometimes. Like it's never perfect, it's never a smooth line. Maybe for some people it is, but you know, there's times where it feels like it's you're never going to get it the way you want to, or your dreams are never going to come true, or whatever, or situation's never going to get better. But if you just keep pushing, if you keep staying on it, you know what I mean, things change, the world changes, and you can adapt to that or use it for your benefit. And I don't know, it's kind of the feeling that we all had working on it during the time. So the music was naturally kind of sounding like that, you know what I mean? So, and I, like I said, I think that is kind of part of the Fallujah sound, is this kind of ambiguous, kind of melancholic kind of sound. So when the triumphant parts do hit, they feel real important, you know?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So hopefully I touched on what you were asking.
Yeah. Having said that, was Celestial Resonance always meant to be an instrumental?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, always.
Okay.
Yeah.
And any thoughts on releasing the other songs in an instrumental only avatar as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. Big time for this one, especially. I actually want to release a few versions of this album, and I, you know, just the way labels work, they want to do the release normal first. You know, they're like, let's try to make as much money off of this as it is right now. But yeah, I think this music, like I you know, to me, this is I think the band's best work. I think it's like the ultimate version of the albums, I guess, you know what I mean? It has everything for me that makes the band what it is, you know. And I also think there's a lot of details, like we have to present it as it is, because this is the ultimate version of it. But you know, there's stuff where I just want to hear Evan play and hear his bass playing. So I want to have a version of the album that's just guitars and bass and drums. You know what I mean? No leads, none of that. You know what I mean? And then of course I want to have it just instrumental, so people could just really just immerse themselves in the music. And also that's how the music was written too. It was music first, and then lyrics written over it. So it's kind of cool to hear it in its original version. And but yeah, to answer your question, definitely want to do instrumentals, and I think we're going to start with that and work our way backwards through the catalogs and kind of just
nice.
Yeah. But we need to get this done, and I had to put all my work into this first. But yeah, I would definitely want to release it instrumental. Even
deluxe edition coming your way.
Yeah, or just the leads. I would love to just put just all the atmosphere and all the weird lead layers, and I would even encourage people to like remix it and do stuff with it. I would love to see that.
Even
That'd be
better.
so cool.
Yeah. Producer edition.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be sick, dude. Yeah.
All right. So, okay, we've talked process and thoughts. We've talked all about the actual album. Let's play a song to the album. Which one do you think represents the album and why?
You know, the singles, they're supposed to be like that choice almost, you know what I mean? Like what is going to get someone what's going to get the album the most attention, really give people a visual of what they're going to hear on the album. So when we went with Radiant Ascension, you know, it's like it's got all of these, it doesn't have all of the elements, but pretty much all the ones you want them to be aware of. It's going to be crazy solos. Here's how the vocals sound and their dynamics, the riffs, the intro of Radiant Ascension, like the intensity of those riffs and the counterpoint riffs. It really gives you a clue on to how intense this album is going to be. You know what I mean? So I thought it was the perfect example to show everybody. But I think, you know, me personally, not trying to be all thinking of a song that's going to go over the well, because you're thinking about other things like people's attention span, and like, you know, maybe half of the people that click on it are dedicated fans or whatever that care about Fallujah and have an emotional but there's probably going to be a huge population are going to be like, what the fuck is this? And you only have like
30 seconds.
Yeah, literally, maybe even like 4 seconds or something like that. And they're just going to be like, no, you know what I mean? They'll hear like one snare hit and be like, that tone sucks. You know, like it's that kind of stuff, you know? So I keep those people in mind or whatever. So it was picked for those reasons. But if I'm not thinking about any of that stuff, I think, and especially after rehearsing the whole album the last couple of weeks, I think duality of intent, something's really cool about that song, and the song structure is unique, and even the key changes, like there's kind of like the intro of the song is in one key, and then when it jumps into the riff, it kind of just jumps like I think a fourth or a fifth, and it does all these unique kind of tricks. And I think every section, there's the whole song I think it's like 5 or 6 minutes long, so it's a long song, so I never really pick it as a single. But yeah, it has all these, it's just like a winding road, you know. It starts with this huge intro, then it goes into the very intense, almost like Necrophagous Obscura type riff section. It has like heavy sections. Let me go through it in my head. And then, it has like this crazy, not like, it's almost like, I don't want to say the Black Dahlia Murder, but you know, Black Dahlia Murder, they would have that almost like very catchy riffs, poppy section kind of thing. I don't know. It's like, it's metal, but you know, it's trying to catch, it's like Melodeath or whatever. There's like Melodeath riffs in it. And then the reason I even bring up the song is this giant, huge prog section where you've got like these delay clean guitars. Evan is doing like a beat, and the drums, the tones change or whatever. And then we got this kind of like Alan Holdsworth, Scott Henderson, like fusion guitar solo that has like modal interchanging. And so that's really nerdy and cool for me. And then following right after that, it's like, instead of just doing one nerdy slow solo, it goes from nerdy slow solo to a heavy section to like a full on like the Stillborn One solo section from Necrophagous with like insane arpeggios, very fast. Sounds like you're in the middle of like Kirby or Mario Land, like the key changes, you know what I mean? It goes full video game, and then that goes back to the riff. So it's like something about that song, it seems like, when I think of it in my head, it seems so colorful. It seems like ultraviolet with the amount of colors, where a song like Into the Eventide is like kind of like a cool blue the entire time. It kind of stays a certain color. Or Soulbreaker kind of is like a yellow green. It kind of stays that kind of angry, envious sound, where Duality of Intent is just so, it has so much color. It changes, keys change, sound and tone. So if I had somebody in here and I was like, I only got one song to show you, I'm going to show them Duality of Intent, because I think there's going to be something in there that's going to catch their attention for sure.
Fantastic. So here it is. Here is Duality of Intent.
we've caught you at the right time also, Scott, is because this weekend you kick off your co-headline tour with Psychroptic, and you've also got Interloper and Cognitive on the bill. Now, I have to be honest, right? I'm really jealous of everyone who's going to be catching the shows because I fucking love that Psychroptic album, man. And like we had a great chat with Jason also on the podcast. So I have to get this from you, right? What are you looking forward to from the shows? I mean, other than just melting everyone's faces off with all the guitar work.
Yeah, I mean, aside from performing and all that, because I absolutely love performing, and even having done the last tour with Rivers to end our kind of like tour hiatus from pandemic, still dying to go back there and play stages. This is absolutely my most favorite thing, is just to perform for people and to present the music that we put all this work into, and just seeing people's excitement. But I think what I'm most excited for, and also making me the most anxious and making me practice my ass off, is just watching the musicianship on the tour. You know what I mean? Like you said, like I've been a fan of Psychroptic since 2006 or 2008. Like Symbols of Failure was the first record I got into them by them. So I've been a fan forever. I'm a massive fan. And Joe Haley has had a huge influence, like directly on my guitar player. He's the guitar playing, and he's the first guy I saw doing the tech death riffs with hybrid picking and making it sound like, you know what I mean? It's like chicken picking death metal riffs, which for sure I do that all over my music. Like, you know what I mean? And that he's a direct result of that. So I think the most exciting thing is going to be, watching these insane guitar players like Miles Dimitri Baker, like Andrew Vierta, like Joe Haley. I'm just going to nerd out just the entire time. And I'm hoping that they're like me and they like to hang out in the green room and nerd out as well. And just like, that's the best. It's always the most fun part. Just like last tour with Rivers, it was Rivers Alluvial. I don't know if you know Alluvial, but spending time with Wes Hauck in the green room, we just spent so many hours discussing guitar and performing, and I just feel like so much growing is done in those moments, and those are always the moments I think back to when I think about the tour. I think about, that discussion we had about music, or what it takes to be a good player and all that stuff. So I'm just excited to witness them play, honestly. And then you brought up that Psychroptic album, their new album, dude. It is something special, truly. Because I'm a fan of the band. I've listened to all the records. I know their records. Like, I have my favorites, favorite songs, whatever. And when I heard this album, when it came out, I didn't have time to listen to it. And 2 weeks later, I finally I'll just put this on. Let's see what's going down, what we're going to hear. And I was just like, oh shit, someone got up on the wrong side of the bed in Australia. It sounds like they were just so pissed off. And it reminded me of the same energy that we had when we were making our own record. It must have been in the middle of all this stuff. And people just had this, it seems like people either just gave up and were like, I'm doing something else. This shit's all fucked. Or they were just like, you can't stop me. I'm going to do the craziest shit I've ever done ever. And I hear that when I hear that album, it's like, holy shit, dude, the riffs are so fast and so sick. The album is super badass. So that's going to be cool being able to watch them perform that. That's rad. Yeah. So mostly just excited for the guitar playing. I'm still a tech death guitar player fan at heart. So that's what I'm most excited about for sure.
And this is something actually that you brought up before we started recording also. So I have to kind of ask you, right? I mean, you've kind of adopted Twitch over the last couple of years. And I have to ask you, because you've got a community of, and I looked this up, it's called the Gleamers. So what's it like building that community? Because I saw that you, on the Rivers of Nail tour, actually met some of them in person for the first time.
Oh yeah. Oh, dude, it was a super fun adventure. Yeah, on that tour, it was kind of a trip because I was just doing my thing during the pandemic, but having that tour happen and just meeting like sometimes 10 people a day from the stream, you know what I mean, and communicating yo, what's your username, and it's weird when someone tells you your username and you have memories of 2 years of hanging out with them every Tuesday and Thursday. It's much different than someone who just comments on your Instagram or comments on stuff. It's like a real connection. We've had real conversations, and I don't know. It's real cool. I feel like way more in touch with, with these people, and also feel way more inspired to do better work because it's like a direct result. I see the people that are enjoying the music and are excited about it and want to support us and want to see us do good. So it's like super inspiring. But yeah, it kind of just started off as, it's like the pandemic happened and it was like, all right, well, we're not going to, like, I know who I am. I'm not going to stop music and try something else. Like I can't do anything else. This is my skill set. This is what I like to do. This is what makes me happy. So we got to make it work some way. So we're doing guitar lessons, trying to my best to learn about, video equipment and stuff like that. It's a whole new world. I was just all about guitar playing. The best I could do is just set up my cell phone and take a video. That's how you got videos of me. So I was trying to learn all that and what it takes to make good, maybe YouTube content and all this stuff. And I had my friend Dean Lamb from Archfire. He was, helping me out. He kind of already established himself on YouTube, and now it's grown into even cooler thing. But he was kind of my main dude helping me with all the video stuff. And initially was like, all right, I'm going to just kind of look to what my other friends are succeeding with and kind of go with that and just do my best to make it in that world. And while I was working on that, I was always practicing for stuff. And I said, I'm spending these hours practicing just totally isolated alone. I'm sure there's plenty of people that would even enjoy seeing me not be able to play a song very well and slowly get it down and that whole process or whatever. So I think I just started off with putting up a shitty camera and a shitty mic on my desk or whatever. And it just started off with, these small conversations with people who are already fans of me from like Instagram and from the band, and had that like direct contact with my socials or whatever. And then eventually started adding songs to perform. I started learning and performing songs on the stream. And then the playlist grew to be like, let's see, I have it open right now, but I think it's songs I can play. It's about 8 hours of songs. So I learned all of Undying Light, nearly learned all of Dreamless. I learned most of The Flesh Prevails, all of Nomadic, all of The Harvest Womb. So I got to go back and relearn pretty much my entire discography. I mean, I forget them here and there, but if people request them enough, I know that it like kind of gets into a new tier list of what's important to people. I make sure I know those songs. Decapitated, Meshuggah, Gojira, Cattle Decap, Dying Fetus, Death, Deftones, Devin Townsend Project, Faceless, Cynic, Severed Savior.
No Dragon Force, Through the Fire and Flames yet?
Dude, well, that's funny you say that because we did a subathon in December. And one of my goals was, if you complete amount of subs, I will learn and play through the Fire and the Flames. So I've learned most of that song, and I'm practicing a solo. And then the tour came up and all this album stuff came up, so I kind of had to like make it chill. But yeah, that is one of the things I have promised people to learn. And dude, that solo is so absurd. Herman, what the hell, man? But so that whole thing's happening, and it's. I think other musicians are looking over and seeing that it's working too. Yeah. So it's like, oh shit, he's got like actual people watching him every week. And there's even random times where it got to be like thousands of people watching, and it's like the Twitch kind of put a bunch of people in front of me and starting to grow into this whole thing. And we're bringing like, I feel like I brought maybe 5 or 6 different artists, because I would just like find my friends like, what are you doing, man? Are you sad? Stop being sad. Get on Twitch. You know what I mean? Like, and a lot of them were jumping on and seeing success with that. And now it's grown into this kind of like scene of artists and people in the audience. We're all kind of together. Like, for instance, this Friday, we're doing like an album release party. So I'm going to have a bunch of artists that are streamers, that are not streamers, that all come through, perform. So I don't know. It's just like so much different. If we didn't have Twitch and it was like, 3 years ago, we would just, release the album online. We'd make a post on Facebook and just be, or maybe even a personal video if you really put the effort into it or something. And then that would be it. But like this Friday, we're going to play the songs live for you. We're going to like talk to you. We're going to listen to the album together as a group. Like everybody that's been here the 2 years, you know what I mean? We'll all be in the chat hanging out, like enjoying this moment together, because we were all waiting. Some of us had to work on the album, some of us had to just watch, but I feel like we were all there together, you know what I mean? And like, to me, those people that were there during the 2 years requesting songs from the older albums and telling me which songs they like, and all that excitement and feedback that was put into our album, you know what I mean? Because it's like, I think that also made this album much better, because the albums before, we didn't know our songs very well because we weren't not forced, but we didn't relearn them. Those songs I hadn't heard in 10 years, you know what I mean? So I felt like I really knew the whole discography. I knew what fans really enjoyed about the discography. I kind of took all of that inspiration and then just made new music with all of that in the back of my head. And, you know, it made for like, I couldn't have think of a better way to set yourself up to be in the mood and in the vibe to make this music. So yeah, Twitch it's been really important. And now it's like, it's a part of the rig. It's not like we don't need it anymore and we could discard it. It's like now it's a part of what we are. Like I said, we're doing our party on Friday. I just got this rig where I'm going to be streaming from the tour, like POV.
Oh, nice.
If you join the chat or the stream, you'll probably see me practicing in the green room, maybe with other artists. Like I said, I'm getting all excited about all these insane artists on the tour. Like, might as well capture some moments of us jamming in the back room, discussing music. I think people would love that, you know. So it's become a real cool thing. Now I'm just trying to work on improving it and seeing how I could take it to the next level. And, you know, guys like Herman Lee and Matt Heafy, they've been really accommodating and they'll give me advice and they'll tell me, you know, and they're also interested in seeing, like, can you innovate this in any way? And I don't know, so it's a really cool community. It's so awesome. Like I said, like the dudes at the top are sending, you know, are talking on Instagram and text, you know what I mean? It's where in other industries, you know, they'll be gatekeeping and they don't want to let you in because they're afraid you're gonna knock them off or some shit. I don't know. Yeah, but Twitch is awesome. I could talk forever on that, to be honest.
Yeah. And actually I've been watching like Matt Heafy's streams, and it's kind of cool because like he does some of the stuff with he's just playing video games and chatting, right? And there are people who kind of joining on that. So there's a bunch of stuff. Everyone's kind of doing different things.
Yeah, but I like to keep it all music all the time. I love video games, but I just feel like all music all the time for me. But yeah, they found their thing that works. I think Herman, he's all music all the time. That's his thing too. Yeah, no video games unless some community thing. Yeah, it's awesome. And then the other thing is no time not playing music. You know what I mean? That's like that's what I was looking for, is like making Instagram content or all the YouTube. I found that you just spend a lot of time editing or coming up with content so you can continue so you could be consistent, because that's like seems to be king over everything else, is consistency above being above good content or whatever. And then all of a sudden, instead of being a musician that works on music and is writing albums and all that stuff, I'm editing videos and like coming up with riffs on Guitar Pro to impress people, which is like, to me, is not the goal, you know what I mean? But I can see why you want to do it. You're trying to grow your brand so that way people listen to your music and care about it. So I don't know, I was just trying to make something work where I could, you know, do what I thought was valuable but still connect with people and be consistent. And Twitch is probably the best way I can think of right now.
Interesting.
So I know exactly now what we're getting you back on the podcast for.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, bring me back, dude. I love it. You guys are awesome.
Yeah, we definitely have to do like this entire thing on Twitch, because like I'll be honest, right? Like Twitch or anything with social media, just like anything in social media, is kind of polarizing when it comes to the metal community, right? Like either you get it or you don't. There's no like middle ground, like I'll try this and then figure it out. You either have there. So I think that's an interesting take that you have, and just the way you've kind of built that community, right? I think that's the more important part.
I think some also that's really important. And I think this is where when I just basically started on Twitch, you know what I mean? Nobody was really watching. I was just surfing around Twitch to get the vibe for like what's going on, what kind of stuff is going on this platform. And I saw this kid playing this game called Osu. And it's basically Dance Dance Revolution for your fingers or whatever. It's like a weird version of that. It's like it has more elements, but it's essentially Dance Dance Revolution. You're like doing movements to music, and he had like 2,000 people watching him, and he was playing like this ultra fast techno, you know what I mean? Dance Dance Revolution, like, just like going all crazy, and people are watching him, and he's scrolling. He's like, let's do something on expert. Let's find something expert. And he's like, this will work. And he clicks it, and Cattle Decapitation comes on, and it's just like, and I'm like, whoa, what just happened? Like 2,000 people are watching Cattle Decap be played by this kid on this thing, and people are loving it. They're having a fun time, and that's when it clicked for me. It was like, oh, like this is like with Spotify and social media and all that stuff, people hear the music, they hear the vocals or something like that, and a lot of people are all screaming and they turn it off, or you know what I mean. I think when people are seeing it visually happen, like they're watching me play a Meshuggah song, or they're watching me play Cattle Decap, and they see the fingers, I think you're way likely to bring somebody into this music than if they were just to hear the music or whatever. So I think that's another thing that makes Twitch valuable, is because I think tech death is actually much more enjoyable when you have the visuals. That's why playthroughs are so important to us, and that's why I think Twitch would be really important to people, because it's like the drums and the guitar. It's much more enjoyable to see how much effort is going into it than just hearing it. I don't think you get the impact when you hear it. So that's another thing that I think Twitch separates itself from the other stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just hope you're a Twitch ambassador. They make you one soon.
Yeah, send her a message.
Yeah.
It's just being honest. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well. Let's see. This chat has given me quite a lot of new ideas, which is great, because it's not often that a chat gives us great ideas. No, Peter?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah,
That's
And usually it's just about us fanboying over who we're talking to.
No, dude, I'd love to see you guys do your conversations live from Twitch, man. That'd be sick. You could look over the chat and somebody will ask something you forget to ask.
Bringing
It's
Twitch
cool.
to
It's
India.
it's like a
Yeah.
hive mind. Unless, they ban you guys. They're like, nope, Twitch is
Oh
banned.
no!
It's very
no,
much
you-
possible. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's entirely
But,
possible. Oh well, Scott, thank you so much for your time, because I kind of feel like if we could just continue chatting and picking each other's brains about each other's creative processes and music and a whole lot more. But yeah, you've done 30 of these interviews
Yeah.
so far.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, it's exciting time. It's, like finally here it is. Like this is when we're doing these interviews that it's coming up close. Like people are talking about that, and also it's really like I care a lot about this music, put a lot of work into it, and for people to do interviews and help us spread the word, that's super important. So I value that a lot, and also these are fellow music lovers, so these are my people. I love having these conversations. It's not like when you're at the store and they're like, "Oh, you're in a band?" Like you're like, I don't want to explain this to you. Like,
It's like
Completely get that too.
you have long hair. Are you in one of those metal bands?
Yes, dude. Like I could tell as soon as you walked into the meat section. Yeah.
Oh well, that was Fallujah, Scott Carstairs on Horns Up. What did you make of Empyrean? Shout it out so that we can hear you. Do so at hornsuppod.com or on Twitter at hornsuppod. As always, I'm on Twitter at Asmani.
I'm at Trend Crusher.
And this was Horns Up.
Horns up, guys.